Right, so Mallory Park debrief. We had some issues at Mallory Park with the car this weekend just gone. Now, we were using the event as a bit of a test bed ahead of Brands Hatch this weekend anyway, and I'm glad that we did, because we have unearthed some issues that we need to rectify before round 7 this weekend. So we did a quick 60 event and we had a total of 6 runs in the quick 60. We had 3 practice runs and 3 timed runs, and then ultimately in our 6th and final run we got eliminated in the second round of eliminations, unfortunately, but we were up against some much quicker machinery. So the cars that we did beat on paper should blow this out of the water, so I'm really happy that the car performed that well. But yeah, let's go back to our first 3 sessions that we did. We didn't actually complete the full lap. The car kept cutting out at random points around the circuit. The engine just wouldn't come back to life, and I'm sat there trying to restart the engine and the car just isn't starting back up. Then just out of the blue it starts back up, and then I managed to limp it back to the pits. Long story short, after about 3 or 4 hours worth of diagnosis of going in, breaking down, coming back in, we've discovered after the first session the starter motor had stopped throwing out the pinion, so you could hear it turning but not throwing out the pinion to engage the flywheel. And what we think is happening is that starter motor is drawing too much current out of the electrical circuit, and it's dipping below 10 volts, and when the Haltech dips below 10 volts it turns off the injectors. So what was happening is basically we just weren't getting fuel, getting spark but no fuel. So we need to diagnose that this morning, because that's pretty much the only issue really, is the alternator and starter motor. Now luckily we bought the starter motor from a local motor factor, so it is covered under warranty. So we've got a new unit this morning. Now what I forgot was, it was a cheap brand. I've never heard of Holt's before, and I used to work in the motor trade, so I would have preferred an auto electro unit, but this is all we've got. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to swap over this starter motor to see if that cures the issue of starting the car up. So right, so the new starter's on, but it's still not starting. We've still got some sort of parasitic power draw from somewhere. We're still dipping below 9 volts when the engine's cranking over. So now we're going to investigate the alternator to see what output it's putting out. I'm pretty sure that if I use this little jump pack, the car will start straight up. Right, well that didn't work, so we're going to have to do some more investigation of why the engine won't start. So I'm going to put it back up in the air and make sure I put all the earths and everything back in the places where they're meant to be, and see if that's the root cause. I'm just going to plug into the Haltech as well to see if we've got any error logs in there, to see if the crank sensor is still playing up. But yeah, back in a jiffy. So there is nothing obvious now. It spins over lovely, we've got plenty of voltage, but it still won't start now. at Quick 60 at the weekend, we swapped the cam and the crank sensor over because they are the same sensor, and it struck up. So I'm going to go rip the crank sensor out of the spare engine that we've got and fit that and see if we get anywhere with that. Now unfortunately that sensor is scrapped. Probably just sort of see on there, so when the trigger wheel yeeted itself off that crank, it's took the sensor with it unfortunately, but luckily the cam cover sensor is the exact same sensor, exact same part number, so yeah, let's swap over crank sensor and see if we get anywhere with that. Right, so how bizarre is that? We have swapped the crank sensor over from a spare engine that we had, and it fires right up, no problems at all. We've either got an issue with the crank sensor wiring, maybe a loose pin somewhere, or for some strange reason the car's just killing crank sensors all the time. A bit annoying, but I don't know what we can do at this stage to rectify it, so we're just going to carry some spare crank sensors for the rest of the season. Now luckily the cam sensor in the rocker cover is the exact same part number, so we've got an abundance of them sensors to take with us. Right, so there's also one more issue we're going to address while we're here, and that is the alternator. So let me just wind it back a bit. When we was at Quick 60 this weekend, the engine wouldn't start. It would start, then wouldn't start, would start, wouldn't start. So we had an error come up, which was a trigger signal error. So we swapped the cam and the crank sensors over. It fired up straight away. And then on the Sunday for retro rides, we did some sprint laps. After coming in, car ran great. Turn the car off, car wouldn't start. And in the end, we had like a little battery pack on the battery to sort of boost the voltage in the system. So basically like one of these like lithium ion jump packs. And after putting that on, the car struck straight up. Or if we did a bump start, it struck straight up. Just the engine wouldn't run if you were trying to activate it on the starter motors. Bizarre, but coming back to that, while diagnosing all that, we discovered that the alternator was only putting out 13.2 volt at the battery. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick the car up in the air. I'm going to get a multimeter on the back side of the alternator and see what voltage we're putting out directly at the alternator. Right, so we are getting 14 points. Yeah, so the alternator's working correctly. So let's go quickly test it at the battery. So we are getting 14 points with volts at the alternator, so maybe the starter motor was the cause then. I don't know.